The real reason déjà vu happens: you are in a place you have never been before. A conversation is unfolding around you that you have never had. And then it hits a wave of absolute certainty that you have been here, in this exact moment, before. The words feel pre-written. The room feels memorized. You know what someone is about to say before they say it. And then it passes. And you are left with nothing, no memory of when this happened, no explanation for why it felt so real. Just the strange, slippery residue of a moment that your brain recognized as familiar but your conscious mind cannot place. That is déjà vu. And it happens to roughly 2/3 of the population. The question is, what exactly is going wrong in your brain when it occurs? The answer is not what most people think. And it says something surprising about how memory actually works. The problem with studying déjà vu has resisted scientific study for most of its history. Not because it is rare, but because it is completely unpredictable. You cannot schedule it. You cannot provoke it on command. By the time a researcher could set up any kind of measurement, the experience is already gone. For most of the 20th century, the scientific understanding of déjà vu was dominated by speculation. Freud suggested it involved repressed memories. Others connected it to past lives. For a long time, the most popular explanation was simply that it was a kind of brain glitch, a misfiring signal, nothing more. The problem with calling it a glitch is that it does not explain anything. It just gives the phenomenon a dismissive name. The real breakthrough came when researchers stopped trying to catch déjà vu in the act and started thinking carefully about what memory actually is and what familiarity specifically means in the brain. Two kinds of memory: when you remember something, you are not doing one thing. You are doing at least two very different things, and they happen in separate brain systems. The first is recollection. This is what most people mean when they talk about memory. You remember a specific event: who was there, what was said, where you were standing, the light in the room. Recollection is detailed, contextual, narrative. It places you in a specific past moment. The hippocampus is central to this process. The second is familiarity. This is a much faster, much simpler signal. Something feels known. You get a sense of recognition without being able to place why. You walk past a face in a crowd and feel certain you know that person, but you cannot produce a single specific memory of meeting them. The parahippocampal gyrus, a region adjacent to the hippocampus, is heavily involved in generating this familiarity signal. In normal memory, these two systems work together and in sequence. You recognize something, and if it is genuinely familiar, your hippocampus retrieves the context that explains why. The familiarity signal fires, recollection follows, and the full memory snaps into place. But what happens when the familiarity signal fires and recollection finds nothing? The familiarity signal without recollection: this is the central mechanism behind déjà vu. The parahippocampal system generates a powerful sense of recognition. Your brain receives that signal and concludes, this is familiar. This has happened before. But when the hippocampus goes looking for the specific memory that would explain the familiarity, it comes back empty. There is no matching episode. No context. No recollectable moment. What you experience is the feeling of recognition with no source. An answer without a question. The certainty of having been here before, with nothing to attach it to. This is not your brain working incorrectly at the level of recollection. Recollection is doing its job, searching and finding nothing. The misfiring is at the level of the familiarity signal itself. Something has caused the parahippocampal system to flag a moment as familiar when it is not. And your conscious experience of that misfired signal is déjà vu. Where the misfiring happens, understanding why the familiarity signal misfires requires understanding what normally triggers it. The parahippocampal gyrus is highly sensitive to spatial layouts. Not to specific objects or details, but to the overall configuration of a scene, the arrangement of elements in a space. Researchers have found that you can generate a familiarity response to a completely novel scene simply by making it structurally similar to a scene the person has encountered before. The room arrangement matches. The proportional layout echoes something stored. The signal fires even though the specific room is new. One researcher who has investigated this extensively used virtual reality environments to deliberately provoke the familiarity signal. Participants navigated scenes that were structurally similar to previously learned environments but with completely different visual content. Many reported a distinct sense of familiarity, not quite déjà vu, but the same underlying feeling. The parahippocampal system was responding to a structural match it had detected, without the hippocampus having any specific memory to explain it. This is one of the most plausible mechanisms for spontaneous déjà vu in daily life. You enter a room whose spatial layout echoes something you have seen before: a film, a childhood home, a place visited briefly years ago. The layout is close enough. The familiarity signal fires. Your hippocampus searches and finds nothing specific. You experience déjà vu. The trigger does not have to be spatial. It can be a conversational rhythm, a sensory combination, a sequence of events that resembles the statistical structure of something previously experienced. The brain is continuously comparing what it perceives now against patterns stored in memory. When a close enough match appears, the familiarity system signals recognition even if the hippocampal system has nothing to show for it. The temporal lobe connection. There is a second mechanism that is particularly well understood, because it appears in an extreme form in people with temporal lobe epilepsy. Déjà vu is one of the most commonly reported aura experiences before a temporal lobe seizure. For people with this form of epilepsy, déjà vu can occur multiple times per day, sometimes for minutes at a stretch rather than seconds. The experience is often described as far more intense and disorienting than the fleeting version most people know. What temporal lobe seizure activity appears to do is spontaneously activate the familiarity-generating regions of the medial temporal lobe, triggering the recognition signal without any external input at all. There is no partially matching scene. There is no structural echo of a previous environment. The familiarity signal fires because the neural circuitry itself is discharging. This has given researchers a window into the mechanism. Studies using electrical brain stimulation in epilepsy patients, a procedure sometimes used during pre-surgical assessment, have reproduced déjà vu by stimulating specific areas of the medial temporal lobe, particularly the entorhinal cortex and pararhinal cortex, which feed into the parahippocampal system. In other words, stimulate the right circuitry directly, and the experience of déjà vu follows. This is strong evidence that déjà vu is not a vague psychological event but a specific neural phenomenon with a specific anatomical address. Who gets it more, and what that tells us? Déjà vu is not equally distributed. Research consistently finds that it is more common in younger adults than in older adults, more common in people who travel frequently, more common in people who watch more films and television, and more common in people who report high levels of fatigue or stress. At first, this pattern seems inconsistent. But it makes sense once you understand the mechanism. Younger adults have brains in which the memory systems are more active and more easily triggered. Frequent travelers and media consumers have larger stores of spatial layouts and scene configurations, more potential templates for the parahippocampal system to match against. Fatigue increases the chance of processing errors, including misfiring familiarity signals. The decrease in déjà vu with age is particularly interesting. Older adults experience it less often, but not because the brain becomes better at avoiding false familiarity signals. It appears to be because the familiarity signal itself becomes weaker with age. Older adults are less likely to flag things as familiar at all, which reduces déjà vu but also reduces the speed and confidence of genuine recognition. The error correction hypothesis here is the part that most people do not expect. For much of its history, déjà vu was understood as a malfunction, a sign of something going wrong. A memory glitch, a momentary lapse in the brain's reality testing system. Something to be apologized for or dismissed. But a growing body of research suggests the opposite interpretation. Déjà vu may be evidence of the brain's error correction system working correctly. Consider what is happening during the experience. The familiarity signal fires. Recollection searches and finds nothing. And what is the result? You become aware that something does not add up. You know that you have not actually been here before. You are disoriented, but not fooled. The strange, slightly vertiginous quality of déjà vu is precisely the feeling of your brain detecting an internal inconsistency and flagging it. Research in people with certain memory conditions supports this interpretation. People with some forms of damage to the frontal lobes, which play a major role in monitoring and evaluating memory signals, do not experience déjà vu. Instead, they experience something called reduplicative paramnesia or persistent déjà vu. They become convinced that a current situation is a repeated one and cannot shake the belief. The error detection system is offline. For people with normal frontal lobe function, déjà vu does not become a delusion. The misfired familiarity signal is registered, but the monitoring system immediately catches the inconsistency and generates the conscious experience of strangeness. That strangeness is not the malfunction. It is the correction. What the experience actually is déjà vu is the sensation of your brain catching itself in a mistake. The familiarity signal misfired. Something, a spatial layout, a sensory pattern, a structural echo of a stored experience, triggered the recognition system without a matching memory. And the monitoring system, working as it should, noticed the contradiction between the signal it received and the evidence it could find. The feeling of unreality, the sense that this moment has already happened, the inability to pin down where or when, these are not symptoms of a failing brain. They are the output of a brain that is actively checking its own work, finding an inconsistency, and reporting it to conscious awareness. You are not malfunctioning when you experience déjà vu. You are experiencing the sensation of your own brain quality controlling its memories in real time. The unsettling part is not that the system misfired. Systems misfire. The unsettling part is that the feeling it produces of a moment already lived, of reality folding back on itself, is so convincing that for a few seconds, it is almost impossible to disbelieve it. Your brain generates a false certainty. Then catches it. Then shows you both at the same time. That is déjà vu. And the fact that you notice it is working exactly as intended.